Claude Code reportedly contains 512,000 lines of harness code. That harness is not yours. The planning logic, the memory, the context management, all of it lives behind Anthropic's API. The day you want to swap models, move off Claude, or take your agent's accumulated memory somewhere else, you find out what you actually own, which is nothing. LangChain shipped DeepAgent in March 2026 specifically to fix that. They reverse-engineered the architecture that made Claude Code work, made it model agnostic, MIT licensed it, and put it on PyPI. Pip installed DeepAgents. By the end of this video, you'll know what a harness actually is, and why it's the thing that matters more than the model. Exactly how DeepAgent replicates Claude Code's architecture without the lock-in, the specific scenario where Claude Code still wins and DeepAgent doesn't, and the catch that LangChain buries in the fine print. Start with a word nobody explains: harness. Every AI coding agent you've ever used, Claude Code, Codex, Cursor's agent mode, is not just a model. It's a model plus a harness. The model is the brain. The harness is everything else. The planning loop that breaks a complex task into steps. The to-do list the agent writes and tracks. The file system tools that let it read your code, write files, and run commands. The context management that compresses long conversations before the model loses the thread. The sub-agent system that spins up a specialist for a narrow task and reports back a clean summary. The human-in-the-loop interrupt that pauses execution and waits for your approval before doing something irreversible. That is a harness. And Claude Code's harness is extraordinary. It is, according to LangChain's own documentation, the direct inspiration for DeepAgent. They said it plainly on the GitHub README. This project was primarily inspired by Claude Code, and initially was largely an attempt to see what made Claude Code general purpose and make it even more so. The problem is that Claude Code's harness is inseparable from Claude. You run the harness. The harness runs Claude. That's the only option. Here's what that actually costs you. Not in dollars, in control. Let a CTO, Sarah Wooders, put it cleanly. Asking to plug memory into an agent harness is like asking to plug driving into a car. Memory and harness are the same thing. Every conversation your agent has, every preference it learns, every cross-session fact it accumulates, that all flows through the harness. When the harness belongs to Anthropic, the memory belongs to Anthropic. You want to move to GPT 5.5 because it's cheaper for your use case? You're starting from scratch. You want to run a local model on sensitive code that can't leave your building? Not an option. You want to query your agent's memory directly, build on it, export it, behind a closed API? Not yours. LangChain calls this the lock-in spectrum, and they ranked it in a public analysis in April 2026. Mild lock-in is using stateful APIs where the model provider stores your conversation. Bad lock-in is a closed harness with undocumented memory handling. Worst is a full harness as a service where your agent's entire learned behavior lives behind someone else's API, and you have no access to the format. Claude Code sits in that second tier. Claude Managed Agents, Anthropic's hosted version, sits in the worst one. DeepAgent's answer is three things: open source, model agnostic, memory you own. The architecture is identical to Claude Code's at the conceptual level. Decompose, retrieve, compose. The agent gets a task. It writes a to-do list using a built-in planning tool, the same no-op to-do pattern Claude Code uses. It reads files, writes files, runs code in a sandbox. When the task is too big for one context window, it spawns a sub-agent with its own isolated window, does the narrow work, and reports back a single, clean summary. The parent agent never sees the raw transcript, just the result. The difference is the wiring underneath. 2 lines of code is the entire model swap. Any model that supports tool calling works. Frontier APIs from OpenAI, Anthropic, Google. Open weight models hosted on Base 10 or Ollama. The harness doesn't care. The brain is interchangeable. The architecture stays the same. Memory lives in your own PostgreSQL via LangSmith deployment, or in a plain agents.md file in your repo if you're running it light. Either way, it's yours. Readable by you, portable by you, queryable directly via API. If you self-host, you're the only one with access. Now, here's what DeepAgent doesn't do. It does not win on raw terminal coding performance. Not close. Claude Code with Opus 4.8 sits at 78.9% on Terminal Bench 2.1 and 69.2% on SWE-bench Pro, which is the contamination-resistant, real-world benchmark that actually matters. Those numbers reflect a decade of Anthropic optimizing Claude specifically for agentic coding. The model and the harness, built together, tuned against each other, shipped as one product. DeepAgent is a harness. It's only as good as the model you plug into it. Plug in GPT 5.5 and you're competitive. Plug in a 7 billion local model because you're privacy constrained and you're working with a sharp junior who needs steering, not a senior who thinks through architecture. The developer at Mager.co, who broke this down after launch, put it plainly. If you want the best terminal experience for yourself, Claude Code still wins. If you're building agents into your product, DeepAgents is the move. That's the actual split. Personal coding workflow versus agent infrastructure you're shipping to users. The part LangChain would prefer you learn later. DeepAgent is built on LangGraph. LangGraph is excellent. It is also LangChain's runtime. And LangChain, as of LangChain 1.0 GA in October 2025, has an approximately 8% framework-injected prompt scaffolding overhead on every call, down from 14% in the older version, which is real improvement, but it's still there. You are paying for the abstraction on every token. A measured review from May 2026 also flagged the complexity tax directly. LangChain 1.0 is stable but heavy. The complexity tax is real. The framework surface area is significant. For a simple, bounded agent, you might not need the full harness. LangChain's own docs acknowledge this. They maintain a lighter create_agent option and a bare LangGraph option for exactly the cases where DeepAgent is too much architecture for the job. The code also has no source code released yet for certain features. The docs exist, the harness is open source, but the DeepAgents deploy managed infrastructure. The part that handles multi-tenancy, sandboxing, and session management at scale is LangSmith deployment, which is a paid product. You get open harness infrastructure combined with a commercial runtime. The harness is MIT licensed. The runtime is not free. And DeepAgent is production tested at OpenSWE and LangSmith Fleet, according to the docs. But it launched in March 2026. Claude Code has been running in production since 2024. The track record gap is real. Zoom out, and what's happening here is bigger than one tool. The agent harness is becoming the moat, not the model. Every serious lab and framework is building around the same insight. The model is the interchangeable part. The harness, the planning loop, the memory, the context management is where the real leverage lives. Anthropic understood this first, which is why Claude Code's harness is 512,000 lines, and Claude Code is now responsible for more than 10% of all public GitHub commits. LangChain understood this when they reverse engineered it and stripped the lock-in out. The fight in 2026 is not Claude versus GPT. It's whether your agent's memory belongs to you or to whoever built the container it runs in. DeepAgent is not better than Claude Code at writing code. It never claims to be. It's better at something Claude Code can never offer: staying yours. The model picks the best brain. The harness decides who keeps the mind.